Coming up on this episode.
Well, that's really important for us to understand, because some people will be easily more able to acclimatise to dealing with technology. And we all have individuals that we know struggle with tech. But that's not saying that they're doing the wrong thing. That's just because they weren't around to actually live it. And you've got a 3-year-old now, which again will be coming into those generations Alpha and Beta that we're going to be needing to adapt to these guys.
But again, if I'm feeling frustrated with you, or you're feeling frustrated with me, we might be satisfied or justified in that feeling of that emotion, but actually, what are we doing in that moment to reduce the friction of the conversation? So you're sat there going dinosaur, I'm sat there going
Little whippersnapper.
Yeah, being in the company 5 minutes. What do they know?
Yeah.
That's not moving forward with positive intent, is it? It's also about, I guess, and you mentioned challenging there. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on, but
yeah,
it's how we communicate those expectations and needs both ways, right? And I know we've had in the past a bit of a workshop with a collaboration with Nicholas Associates on generational shift, and we've got a workshop coming out on it.
Welcome to the People Performance Podcast. The People Performance Podcast is made up of 3 series. First up, we have the Leader Lounge episodes with founder of T2, Martin Johnson. Then we have the guest interview episodes. And finally, we have our performance episodes delivered by our very own T2 consultants. For now, sit back, tune in and enjoy the People Performance Podcast.
Welcome to the latest episode of the People Performance Podcast with me, Rich McCarthy.
And me, James Cooper.
So for the first time in history, many organisations are dealing with 5 different generations in the workplace. So we're looking at a lot of different attitudes, communication styles, and expectations within the workplace. Okay, but I think the biggest thing we're going to be talking about today, James, is how do leaders bridge that gap between these 5 generations? All right.
Yeah, and I think when we are talking about as leaders bridging the gap, well, okay, what are the things that we can really start to look at and are going to be very much part of our working lives as we're moving forward, and having those 5 generations and how they interact with each one of those innovations or that new technology that's coming out. And we are going to address the AI as well.
100%.
Okay.
I think looking at what does great leadership look like between leading those 5 generations, right? So if we, let's dive straight into it, understanding that generational shift between those 5 generations. Why is it such a hot topic right now? Okay, and what is the challenge around having those 5 different generations in the workplace?
So I think the first place to sort of start is just to really be clear on what the outlook is from these 5 generations. So if you think about your silent generation, which makes up 1% of the people in your workforce. So again, who are the people that are coming towards not necessarily the end of their career, but they might be sat on boards and they're a little bit more senior. You've also got baby boomers, which again make up 12% of on average, the 12% of an organisation at the moment. Gen X's, which is 37%, which again, think about those dates and what generation you sit in. And then the Millennials, so the Generation Y's, they are making up 36%. And then finally, because obviously the people that are not old enough to work yet, you've got people that are those Gen Z's or Generation Z that are making up 14%. So I suppose once you understand the dynamic of how organisations on average are built at the moment, well, we need to start, first of all, think about those 2 big points of 37% and 36%.
And they're going to be getting larger in the future, right?
Potentially, people will shift and move into different areas and will become more dominant within workplaces. Yeah. So what that comes to is then, hold on a minute, what do they bring to the table en masse? Because they're the largest population within your organisation. So that's when we can start to think, well, what we're finding from leaders is, and the research is suggesting this as well, is that leaders are coming up against a lot more challenges. Those challenges is actually challenge itself, because generations gone by where you would conform and you would maybe be seen, not heard, or really working in the shadows. Well, let's start to think about that. These people now in these generations are starting to think, actually, I want to have my opinion heard. I'm going to challenge. Why is it that we do things the way that we do them? Now, for leaders that are stuck in the ways, if you like, and not necessarily very adaptable, that becomes quite stressful. That becomes stressful because you're now dealing with a person that you've never had to deal with before. Where it was, I'm employing you to do a job, you go do your job, you go home, you have your tea, you come back, go to sleep. Right, okay, next, repeat, go again. So I suppose the point is that when things are moving at pace, which again is one of those other challenges that leaders are finding, is that the pace that things are evolving, that people are moving, and you can only just sit and watch the younger generations doing IT and coding, and I'm not saying all coders are younger, by the way, but understanding that from a generational perspective, they are moving at pace. Things are immediate. And I think when we get into it, Rich, it is about what are they expecting going into these workplaces, and how are we managing and meeting the needs of the next generation of people that are actually coming in, which again, it's your Gen Zs that are going to be pushing this envelope even more.
It's also about, I guess, and you mentioned challenging there. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on, but
yeah,
it's how we communicate those expectations and needs both ways, right? And I know we've had a in the past done a bit of a workshop with a collaboration with Nicholas Associates on generational shift, and we're starting to build. We've got a workshop coming out on it, and I think the biggest conversation out of that is like looking behind that challenge. What's driving that behaviour, rather than making an assumption on the person in front of you, and the expectations might not meet yours, right?
And I think when you start to look at what are the new technologies, well, they're accelerated. So the actual technology is accelerating quicker than ever. So where it was that, for example, if you had, and I'm speaking to some of the other generations out there, if you had what we called a Nokia 3210, which was the first phone that actually was allowed to keep for a prolonged period of time, well, that is that. Well, how much is a phone and the technology on a phone developed in the short period of time, i.e. 20, 30, 40 years? Well, people take time to actually adapt to those new technologies and how it can be applied. So if that's moving quickly and you've got a generation that can actually take a new piece of tech, apply it, and then actually move a little bit quicker, it seems that the younger generations are actually able to do that.
So what for a layman around AI and technology, what's the neuroscience and research telling us about how AI is changing the brain at the minute? Because that's quite a hot topic around. We're gonna step into it in a bit around critical thinking, around problem solving. Yeah.
So if you just think about it, well, people that are having shorter attention spans but can move quicker, so you've got to engage them a little bit more. It's not just sit in and you've got to sit through this presentation, because they're already off, they're already doing something else, they're already focusing on it. So it is that we're trying to strike a balance between giving people what they need to be successful and also getting that balance between where do they need to develop. Well, actually, as leaders, it would suggest that we need to create environments where we are challenging critical thinking and problem solving, where if the technology is not going to give you the answer, what are you going to do? If for whatever scenario that AI doesn't work, for whatever reason, or you can't just Google it. It doesn't just come up on a video on YouTube. It's actually, you're going to have to sort this out yourself, because actually this is people.
So then is from a leader's point of view, then is it of like, well, what's your flag on the hill? What's your outcome? Is it saving time, being efficient, getting things done quick? Or is it actually, I want to grow the team to continue to build those problem-solving skills, those critical thinking?
Well, I suppose what we need to allude to is the point of, you have what we call digital natives. So they're the people that have lived with technology for their full life. They are the sort of the generations that are a little bit closer to where we are at the moment.
So Gen Z,
some of the millennials as well, where you're really starting to pinch points and people are taking things on board, but you've still got people that are what we call digital immigrants, where they didn't necessarily grow up totally involved in technology, or they maybe had the very beginning of what technology was looking like in the development of a phone and the internet. Well, that's really important for us to understand, because some people will be easily more able to acclimatise to dealing with technology. And we all have individuals that we know struggle with tech. But that's not saying that they're doing the wrong thing. That's just because they weren't around to actually live it. And you've got a 3-year-old now, which again will be coming into those generations Alpha and Beta that we're going to be needing to adapt to these guys. So this isn't just a one brush right the way across all the generations. What leaders need to do is to be that adaptive leader, so that actually, if the technology is coming in, what can I do to immerse our team in it and the individuals within that team, and what my demographic from a generational perspective what that looks like. If it is that I'm now talking to somebody and they're just not getting it, well, why is that?
Yeah, because I think, and I'm just visualising now, like my fear would be, you know, if I've got a team that is made up, the majority of Gen Alpha, betas coming in, and they're very fast and efficient because of AI, and they're utilising that technology, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But my fear is, as soon as I put a question in there that isn't being challenged or thought about from a problem-solving lens, how do I continue as a leader to develop that side of it? Is it coaching conversations? Is it questioning? Is it practice fields to go, look, there's a problem here and we're not using AI at this moment in time? I guess that's a question I have. You know.
I think that definitely is to be considered from people that are running organisations or leading teams. Because if it is that you haven't, we're going to talk about development, L&D, right? But understanding that if I'm trying to develop a holistic person and they're really good at one thing, but they struggle with concentration and the ability to dial in and focus for a prolonged period of time, and that's what's needed in this moment with this situation, and I haven't developed that little ability to do so, I'm going to be in a position where I'm not getting frustrated with you. This is probably unhealthy conflict, because now I'm in a situation where you can't do your job. And AI isn't going to solve that for you. So what are the situations and scenarios where you can see the gap that AI isn't going to give you that quick buzz result straight back?
Yeah.
You're actually going to have to sit in this for a little bit. And this is where you've got an opportunity to gauge that balance and stay right. This is where we need to develop the people that are going to join this organisation and eventually will potentially be taking my job. They'll be stepping into leadership positions. They're going to be challenging, and the way that looks is going to be different. But I have to, as their boss, as their leader, as the person, just being a good person, by the way, you could turn around and go, that's what it is. That's the gap that you guys need. And then we can start planning that. We can start putting situations, creating safe environments where people are allowed to make mistakes and actually refine some of these skills that don't come naturally to them. In fact, it's probably the opposite. So I suppose the challenge is, again, finding that balance between just doing it for the sake of doing it and actually creating environments where this is about developing you.
Yes.
You are able to make some mistakes here because I'm preparing you not for the next day. I'm preparing you for the year in front where actually this is where I need you to be.
And that's from a leadership point of view, this is a reason why we're doing it.
Yeah.
Because of you. Let's take AI out of the equation right now because I want to develop you. Because the argument against that might be, well, AI is going to always be around and it's always going to support me and I don't need to problem solve because AI is there. But hang on, let's put you as the centre of the focus rather than AI as the centre of focus.
So, and I think that's so important, because then when you talk about leading across these generations, well, we've got to get into a little bit of detail around that, right?
Yeah.
So from what we see and what we're talking about and the conversations that we're having and some of the research that's coming out, and again, it's all in Martin Johnson's book, pain and pleasure. But leaders are now, it's not just, this is what I want you to do and this is how you're going to do it. For people that are in these generations that are coming into leadership positions and starting to be that quite a large percentage of your organisation, they want to know one thing. Why? Okay, so this is what I'm going to do, but I can't just leave me at what, because my curiosity is kicking in, my flexibility around this, and is this really hitting my goals and helping me achieve what I want to achieve whilst I'm working for you? So what is it that I'm going to do? Yeah, brilliant. But why am I doing that? What's sort of in it for me? And if we are starting to think that we can just talk to people and speak in the way that has worked in the past, by the way, fine. But I urge you to reach out and put a little comment in the box, because I'd love to see how that goes. So this isn't necessarily for what you're doing now, or it might be with some of the generations you've got in your workforce and how that looks. But rather than being reactive, there's a couple of little pointers that we might want to put across, right, Rich?
Yeah, I think it's a simple sort of four key checkpoint for leaders to move from, I'm having an assumption about this person because they are a different generation, to more of a curiosity and understanding to see what's driving those challenges and behaviours, to then move forward into more positive intent, more positive action. Now, the first one is pause and check. Okay, because what before that pause and check, what anyone can ever fall into when we're dealing or being in front of a different generation is we can quite easily fall into a trap of diagnosing other people.
Now, this is one of the biggest things, because if you think about your professional values from whatever generation you're in, if you think about your professional values and then think about how that then shows up to other people. Now, just understanding, and we've seen it in a number of workshops recently, Rich, where actually somebody's values has had a massive impact on not only them as a leader, but for the team and the way that they interact with each other. So as we start to think about that, when I diagnose, what are some of the things that I would be diagnosing, Rich?
First one is we start diagnosing people.
Right, so fundamentally kick up against me around making assumptions, right?
Yeah.
So what type of things are we diagnosing?
So we might be going, okay, they're a millennial, they're going to do that, or they're a Gen Z, that's how they act. For example, if we use me and you as in that example of a team meeting, and I'm 10 years older than you, and you start challenging me, I'm doing it right now. I'm creating an assumption that actually you're challenging me, that's challenging my authority. I've misdiagnosed that. When actually, rather than seeing that external behaviour that on the surface level, what I can do is I can not diagnose you, but I can go, well, what's driving that? What I think is that behaviour?
Yeah, and the same thing could happen on the other side of that coin, right? I could do the same thing for you.
100%.
If you're 10 years older than me, I could go, God, dinosaur.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You don't get me.
Yeah.
When actually we can start to involve this in a conversation, going, right, let's just take away the assumption, stay curious. What might that mean?
Yeah, well, it's just about asking questions, isn't it, rather than assumptions. I think within that, you can get, obviously, feeling of frustration within those moments. But again, if I'm feeling frustrated with you, or you're feeling frustrated with me, we might be satisfied or justified in that feeling of that emotion, but actually, what are we doing in that moment to reduce the friction of the conversation? So you're sat there going dinosaur, I'm sat there going
Little whippersnapper.
Yeah, being in the company 5 minutes. What do they know?
Yeah.
That's not moving forward with positive intent, is it? But like you said, if we come back to that curious piece, well, James, that feels like a challenge at the minute, but talk to me a little bit about where that comes from.
Yeah.
Rather than me making an assumption and shutting you down in that meeting,
Yeah.
I'm able to go, right, what's driving his behaviour? Because I'm assuming it's a challenge, but it might be just a case of you want to be heard because you've got an idea that we might not have thought about, right?
Or is there something in place in the organisation that actually it's hindering people's innovation and creation? And that's a massive thing. And I call it the Nokia effect, where if you think about Nokia, they're not necessarily doing as much as they used to do. Everybody had one at one point, but now don't see them as much because they didn't want to develop the technology, so you become obsolete. You get out the market, and then people come in and take your spot. So if it's we're not diagnosing. We're not necessarily making assumptions. We're starting with curiosity. What would be the next thing that we'd said to everybody?
So if we're looking at, like, we've paused and checked in that moment of when our biases might be taking over, and we've checked them, and then we've got curious. I think the next one is maybe right before that conversation between those two people or between those different people is maybe contracting expectations in a sense of making the invisible visible, in a sense of, I know I might have a bias about the youngest person in the room as an older generation in a meeting, or like we said, vice versa. But actually, I'm going to contract with that person. I love to be challenged within meetings. Gives them that sort of open expectation contracting to go, okay, I won't see that as a challenge. I'll see it as an open forum. It might be a case of, actually, James, when we go into this next meeting, I need to get through X, Y, Z, but I'll be open for challenges at a later date.
Yeah, and I think when we think about, I've set the expectation there, so that I know how to engage with you. We've agreed it, and that's an important bit. It's not just me telling you; it's me telling you why, not just what, but why. And then I start to really get into that detail of going, right, so what does good look like for us?
And that's the thing. Like we could make an assumption on someone's generation, or make an assumption on someone based off their generation.
Yeah.
But actually, we could get it wrong. We could be trying to do the right thing. I could go, James is a Gen Z. He's going to need X, Y, Z. I'm still making an assumption with positive intent there. But actually, I might have that conversation with you to go, James, what's best for you when we're having conversations? And you might go, I need this from you. Does that make sense? What's best for you? What's best for me? What's best for us in the situation? Until you have that communication, you're fumbling around in the dark.
Yeah, not going to be good. And I imagine the outcomes would be quite visible. And I suppose that's the setting people up for success. But let's just bring the final bit back down to them as leaders. If I'm a leader and I've set all my expectations, I've stayed curious, Rich, and I'm in a really good position. Well, now as a leader, I've now just got to recognise where I need to flex.
Yeah. I think you've got to flex your style as a leader. You've got to, remain consistent with that approach. Like we said, that the key word in those 3 C's is that curious piece.
Yeah.
If you're remaining curious, you're keeping that door open rather than shutting it. And then I think that clarity piece of that communication it needs to be open. Just be honest within that in that positive intent in what you're trying to do by having that conversation with that other person from a different generation.
Yeah, and I suppose it's explaining why.
Yeah.
And knowing that the outcomes are going to be there, and how they can be flexible, how they can do the creative thing and get on with the technology. And then obviously, if you're setting all this up, well, what are the benefits that are going to come from it? Well, we're going to see the people that can move quicker in certain environments. Perfect. Go kick on. You do your bit. And also, we're going to challenge them to get that balance between us not just taking it at face value. It's going, right, so what do I need for these up-and-coming generations that are going to be filling my workforce and potentially stepping into leadership roles? Right, so how can I create an environment where they can thrive? And also, how am I going to develop them? So it's not just about giving them everything that's needed, and because there will be downfalls, there'll be pitfalls in that. So I suppose if we are trying to do so, and we are trying to understand what good looks like for organisations and leaders at the moment, if I was to look at an environment, what type of things would we want to be seeing? How can leaders set themselves up for actually success?
I think the first thing I'd be looking for in that example environment would be the leaders having a self-awareness of who's in the room, who's in their team, the different generations. The second thing would be not making assumptions and labelling of those people But again, remaining curious, remaining open-minded to being proactive in how they can support those different generations, but creating that open forum to have those conversations as well.
So those environments, if I'm hearing that correctly, Rich, and I know we're really talking about creating these environments. Well, those environments will differ per individual as well, right? So you would have an environment where you could make the assumption you could set yourself up for failure, or you can actually do what you think's the right thing to do, which is, again, stay curious, ask the questions, set expectations, and then really start to, okay, this is now how I might need to flex as a leader. And that's the important bit. But that won't fit per industry, per service, per organisation. It's going to be different. So that's where us as leaders step in and go, right, this is what it looks like to us. And by the way, this is why we're asking these questions. This is why we're trying to set these environments up. Because I get it, you're not the same as me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I wouldn't necessarily say these are problems. I'd suggest that these are actually just challenges that you would have to overcome anyway in some way, shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're saying, Rich, is get yourself in front of the curve, because the curve is coming. It's going to be that way. You're going to have lots of these Gen Zs coming in, and they're going to be stepping into your organisations, because we can't keep everybody forever. So what are we going to do to provide and get ourselves in front of that curve? Well, first of all, don't see it as a problem. It is something that's coming. It's something that you can deal with. We've dealt with loads of stuff in the past. As leaders, the best leaders are the ones that can adapt to the situations and make proper judgments. Mm-hmm. Become informed.
Yeah.
If it is that you need to start to listen to another podcast or even reach out to T2 to do a workshop on that generational shift, well, let's get going, because it's going to be going. It'll hit us as leaders in what? 5, 10, 15 years, where you can really start to see that those percentages of different generations and how they make up your organisation, they are going to change.
Yeah, and I think like you just said, and like Martin says in his book, if you're not evolving, you're dying.
Yeah.
So if we look at it as this is the opportunity to evolve, that's the biggest thing. If we reframe our mindset so it is an opportunity rather than a challenge and a barrier as an organisation.
So, combine experience
with
innovation, get that balance between not just understanding the person, but having a little bit more empathy so that you get what's going on in this environment. You understand it, you get to know the feelings and how people are, when you make decisions, when you ask questions, how does that make them feel? Mm-hmm. And do you feel that as well? Or maybe push yourself out your comfort zone a little bit to understand that person.
Go on.
But I think it is just that. It's great leaders, or the leaders that we see that are thriving with an up-and-coming generation of people joining their organisations and their teams. He's going, I see you. I'm listening. Let's just get this in line. Get us aligned with that flag on the hill, like we mentioned earlier. Put that flag on the hill and go, right, how are we going to get there?
And I think that leads into the thought-provoking question that we've been speaking about, in a sense of, when people are joining an organisation, are you expecting them to fit into your organisation, or are you spinning it so you can unlock the strengths of those people and those generations that are coming into your organisation to continue to evolve? So, Jim, we just alluded to in that latest podcast that, it's not about one generation is better than the other. It's about recognising that those generational differences can evolve within an organisation to succeed and thrive. However, it's not about choosing the new or the old. It's about bringing in the empathy, the innovation and the experience of all those different generations to thrive and survive. And that's what great leadership is about, recognising that and combining the both.
Totally agree.
Thank you for joining us on our latest podcast of the People Performance Podcast. With me, Rich McCarthy.
And me, James Cooper.
We'll see you again very soon.
The People Performance Podcast, brought to you by T2,